Okay, what is data preprocessing? Preprocessing, like I was mentioning before, data preprocessing is a step in machine learning that transform the original data to a new form to facilitate the next steps. The next steps means we use the data that has been pre-processed for solving the problem. Yeah, it's like classification problem or regression problem using machine learning algorithm. And there are various types of the data preprocessing, uh, like scaling, standardization, normalizing observation, generating polynomial features, encoding categorical features, detecting outliers, and the last one is handling missing values. And all of these method, yeah, preprocessing method, have been provided by Python, yeah, Python library, and we can use it directly. So we don't need to create our uh, the code, yeah, from scratch. Yeah, so we don't need to create the code from scratch. Yeah, it's very easy. We can just call the function in scikit-learn library, then we can use all of these types, yeah, all of this pre-processing methodology easily. Yeah, so yeah, the background why we need to pre-process our data set, because data can be recorded in different form, and data can be recorded in different scale or unit, like I was mentioning before. The features in our samples, for example, yeah, the bank consumers, yeah, or nasabah data, every nasabah has their own characteristics, or maybe attribute, yeah, or properties like age, name, then income, outcome, saving balance, and something like that. And all of these features has different scale or unit. For example, the scale for the age start from 0 maybe to 90, but the scale for income, it can be start from maybe 1 million rupiah to something 100 million rupiah. So the scale is different, yeah, between one feature to another features. So we need to make the scale make the features has the same scale. So that's why we need to pre-process it first, yeah, because some of the machine learning algorithm assume that all of the features has the same scale. Yeah, we will be discussing after this. And data can be can contain outliers. Yeah, data may contains outliers. Yeah, the outliers. Yeah, uh, and the data that we have may contain outliers. For example, that the staff, yeah, or the admin maybe type the wrong data in the data set. For example, the age, it should be start from 0 to 90, but maybe there is some human error, then they type 900. So there is no human that has 900 age. Yeah. So yeah, that's why we need to remove the outliers first, yeah, before we use the data set. And the last one, data may contain missing values. Yeah, it can be it can also be happen because, yeah, it can be maybe it can be happen because some of the human error also. Yeah, maybe the staff forget to inputting some of data, then it will be missing values. Yeah, it will missing values, it means the data that has a null values. Yeah, not zero values but null values. So in database, maybe there are some uh, attribute maybe that has no values. Yeah, so we need to remove the missing values first, yeah, before we use the data. Okay, this one is the most simple or the simplest method in data preprocessing, scaling. So the scaling is some machine learning algorithm assume that all features are on the same scale. So it means all of the features or attributes, yeah, in a sample, yeah, has the same scale. Yeah. So it means the sum of the machine learning algorithm assume that all features are on the same scale. But not all machine learning algorithm assume like that, yeah. But most of them assume that all features are on the same scale, yeah. So we need to rescale the feature, each feature, to the same scale. So it means, for example, all features are needed to fall on 0 to 1 or minus 1 to 1, yeah. So maybe, for example, we scale the age from 0 to 1, and also the income to 0 to 1, or outcome 0 to 1, yeah, and saving balance 0 to 1 or minus 1 to 1, yeah. Yeah, we can choose one of these. We can use a 0 to 1 or minus 1 to 1, yeah. Yeah, it depends on the case study that we need to solve it. But actually, most of them use 0 to 1 or minus 1 to 1, yeah. So yeah, all of the features that we have in our data set must be on the same scale, 0 to 1, minus 1 or 1. And you can also set your own scale, yeah, maybe minus 100 to 100, or 0 to 100, yeah. It's also yeah, it's okay if you have your own scale, yeah. And we can just use the A and B. A, it means the min and max scaling, yeah. A is the minimum scale, and B is the maximum scale. So for example, 0 to 1, so the A will be 0, and B will be 1, yeah. So we use the min max scaling, yeah, for scale our features, yeah. Yeah. So we can see that this is the formula for min max scaling, yeah. We can suppose a feature has values x equal x1, x2 until xn, yeah. It means x is the features, yeah, the features. So we have n samples, and each samples has x features. So it is important, yeah, to know that. I will draw some table here. For example, we have a data or data frame or table, yeah. Then we have 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So we have 5 columns, yeah. We have 5 columns. It means we have 5 features, yeah. Then we also have one row, yeah, one row, 2 row, 3, and 4. Yeah, let's assume that we have a data set that is represented as a table. Then we have 5 samples, yeah. It means the row will be the sample, yeah, and the columns are the attributes, yeah. So this one is the samples, yeah, and this one is the attributes, and the samples. Yeah, for example, we have 4 nasabah, yeah. Then each nasabah has 5 features or 5 attributes, yeah. We can call it as attributes and or features, yeah. Then we need to rescale. We need to do scaling process to each attributes that we have. So for example, this one we have 5 attributes. Then we will do the scaling process to each attributes, yeah. So this one, and this one, and we have 5 attributes. So we need to do the scaling process to all the features or attributes that we have. So all of the features will be in the range from 0 to 1 or minus 1 to 1, or we can call it as A to B. A is the minimum values, B is the maximum values, yeah. Okay, let's go back to the slide. So this one, yeah, the A and B is min and max scaling. And if we want to convert our original data or attributes to the new values, yeah, to the scale values, yeah. So for example, x accent I equal A is the minimum values, yeah. For example, we need to rescale our attributes to 0 to 1. So A will be the 0, xi will be the original attributes that we want to convert, yeah, minus minimum x. Minimum x is the minimum value from our original attributes, yeah. And B is the maximum values, yeah, the maximum scale, yeah. And A, yeah, the minimum scale. Yeah, like I was mentioned before, if we want to convert it to 0 to 1, so p will be the 1 and a will be 0, yeah, and divided by max x minus min x, yeah. Yeah, max x is the maximum value of x and the min x is the minimum value of x. Yeah, we can just see the example here. So my question is, if we have the x attributes, yeah, that contain 15, 57, 36, 88, and 37, if we want to rescale it to 0 to 1, which one from this, which one from these values will be a 1 and 0? Kenneth or Gabriel? If we want to rescale the x attributes, yeah, to 0 to 1, yeah, so each features will be converted or will be scaled to 0 to 1. So which one from these values that has a 0 and 1 values after we rescale it to 0 to 1? Actually, the answer is on this table, huh? 88, yeah, 88 will be the one, yeah, because this one is the maximum value from the x, yeah, so it will be the one and the minimum values will be the zeros, yeah. Yeah, it's very simple. So my next question is, what is the, what is it called, uh if we have outliers, yeah, if we have outliers to our sample, yeah, what will be happen if we use the min max min max scaling? If we have outliers, yeah, in our data set or features, then that will what will be happen, what will happen to min max scaling? If we have outliers, yeah, it means outliers, it means the data that has a different values, yeah, different values with other data that we have. Well, for example, I put another values here, 1 million, 15, 57, 36, 88, 37, and 1 million. So what will be happening? Huh? So if I put another values here in the x, yeah, so 15, 57, 36, 88, 37, and 1 million. So what will happen? One million will be one, and it can still be 0. And yeah, I'm using that formula again. Yeah. So the 57 will be 0.00000 and something. Yeah. So that will be not effective in machine learning because min max scaling is not robust for outliers. So if we use the min max scaling, so we need to remove the outliers first, then we can rescale the values using min max scaling. So yeah, uh, yeah, it's not robust from outliers if we use the min max scaling. Okay, yeah, but actually, yeah, it's very simple, and if our data uh doesn't contain any outliers, so yeah, it will be okay if we use the min max scaling. Yeah. Okay, we can just implement the min max scaling using scikit-learn's library. So we can just, yeah, directly try to uh Jupyter Notebooks or Google Colab, yeah. So okay, wait. Machine learning with 2 KPZ data pre-processing. Okay. Okay, first of all, we need to import the NumPy library because our data will be in NumPy array. Yeah? Then after that, we can just create a variable here that contain random values. So I will use the np.round, then 100 times np.random.run, then this one is the shape of our NumPy array. So because the np.random.run will randomize the values start from 0 to 1, then I need to multiply it by 100 because I want to randomize the values start from 0 to 100. Yeah, right? Because this one will be a 0 to 1, then I will multiply it by 100 because I want to randomize the values start from 0 to 100. Then 5 and 3, it means the shape of our NumPy array. Yeah? This one is two-dimensional NumPy array. So it means we have 5 samples and 3 attributes. Yeah, this one is the rows and this one is the column. Yeah, why we need to round this the value? Because yeah, like I was mentioned before, this one it can be decimal values. Yeah, if I round it, then it will be round to integer values. Yeah, so we can just print our x variables, then it will contain 15 values. Yeah, 15 values, 5 rows and 3 column, right? So we will doing the scaling process for each attributes. Yeah, so this one we will scale this column, then the next column and the last columns. Yeah, first, second, and third column. So we will scale each column, yeah, or each attributes. Yeah. So like I was mentioning before, we can just use the library from scikit-learn. Then I will call the scikit-learn.preprocessing import min max scalar. Min max scalar. Then I define a variable scalar. It will contain the min max scalar method. Yeah. So I will call the min max scalar like this. Then the next one, yeah, it will a little bit different with the code in our slide, but actually, yeah, it will give the same output, but yeah, I will modify it a little in my code. Yeah, so this one I will create xs. It means the x after we scale it. Yeah, after we scale it to 0 to 1. In this case, I want to scale it to 0 to 1. Okay, xs equal scalar dot fit transform. Ya, dot fit transform, scalar dot fit transform. Yeah, so we don't need to call the fit then the transform method. Yeah, if you see in our slide, yeah, so we divide it into fit method then transform method. Yeah, but in this case, in my code, I just use one line, yeah, for fit and transform. Okay, then after that I transforming the x values, then I print the xs. Okay, then if we see the output after we scale it, yeah, so for example, we wait, okay, if we see on our first column, yeah, we have 96 is the maximum values for column 1 or attributes 1, right? So it will be converted to 1. And the 27 is the minimum values for the first attributes or column, that it will be converted to 0, and so on and so on. Yeah. So yeah. So this one is if we use the min max scaling in using scikit-learn in preprocess in scikit-learn using min-max scaler So for example, I want to change the feature range not from 0 to 1 because this one the default value will be 0 to 1 and the default value will be 0 to 1. But if I want to change the feature range, for example, this one I add the properties or argument here the feature range argument, then I change it to 0 minus 1 to 1 so the range will be minus 1 to 1. So you can just change the feature range if you want to change the minus 1 to 1, so you can just put the feature range argument inside the min-max scaler method. If I want to change it to 0 to 100 or 0 to 10 maybe you can just see in this the output will be the minimum values will be 0 and the maximum values will be 10 okay yeah
Why then 94 so it's 9.7 but the 83 is
94 94 9.7
yeah.
Then
83 is 10
83 is 10 because like I was mentioned before, we change the value for each attributes not each column. So like this. So this one will be this one so 83 will be 10 because this one is the maximum value for second attributes or second column okay. So we don't calculate the scale for each row, but we calculate the scale for each column, not each row, right? But after this, we can also change the scaling process for each row. We will discuss it after this. But actually, in this case, we use min-max scaling, min-max scaler. It works for each column, for each attributes, not each sample or not each row. So that's why 83 will be 10 because the maximum values is 10 The range that we want to change is start from 0 to 10, and 88 is the maximum values for the second attributes. Okay. So this one is for min-max scaling method for pre-processing step. So I will give the text cell here. This one is a scaling process scaling, and the first one is min-max scaling. Okay. I think that's all from min-max scaling. Then we can just move to the next method. Next method is standardization. Standardization is used to transform a feature to a new form such that it has a mean of 0 and a standard deviation of 1. It is different if we compare it to min-max scaler, because min-max scaler, after we scale the data, the output will be in the range from 0 to 1, minus 1 to 1, or A to B. But actually in standardization, we don't know the minimum values or the maximum values. But the mean values of our data after we scale it will be 0, and the standard deviation will be 1. So it means after we scale the data using standardization, the output will have the mean of 0 and standard deviation of 1, and we will not know the minimum or maximum values for our scaled data. It's similar if we suppose a feature has values x equal x1 x2 to xn, so we have n samples and we need to standardize it using standardization to the new values x accent equal x accent 1 x accent 2 to x accent n. It means the new values after we scale it using standardization, and such that the mu x, the mean values of x, is 0 and the standard deviation of x the new x will equal 1 using the following equation. So this one is the formula for calculating the new values after we standardize our features So xi accent equal xi minus mu x divided by sigma x. Sigma x is the standard deviation of X, yeah. So we can call it as sigma, yeah. Sigma means the standard deviation from our samples, and the mu X is the mean values from our samples, yeah. So the mu X, as you can see here, you can just see, yeah, this one is the formula for calculating the mu X, and this one is the formula for calculating the standard deviation of X, yeah. Yeah, if we compare standardization with min-max scalar, standardization is more robust to noise, yeah, because it will calculate the mean and the standard deviation from our samples. It will not calculate the minimum or maximum values from our samples. So it will be more robust to outliers if we compare with the min-max scalar. Okay, then yeah, this one is the example of the standardization. We use the same data. Yeah, we use the same data with our previous min-max scalar method. Yeah, so let X equal 15, 57, 36, 88, and 37 be a feature. Then we standardize the X values to 0, min, and standard deviation 1. So the first thing that we need to do, we can just calculate the mean values from our data. Then the mu X, the mean values equal 46.6, yeah. And the standard deviation from our data equal 24.6. Then after that, we can just calculate the new values, yeah, the scaled values, yeah, the scaled values after we standardize it. Then 15 will be minus 1.20x, yeah. So the output can be negative, yeah. And 57 will be 0.42 and so on and so on. Yeah. So we can just use the standardization if we don't know, we don't know is if our data contains outliers or not, yeah, we don't know, then we can just use standardization. So we don't need to doing the noise removal or outliers removal first, yeah. But actually, if we use the standardization, then we also remove the outliers, yeah. Yeah, it will be okay, yeah. So if we compare the standardization with min-max scalar, standardization is more robust with the noise, yeah. Okay. Okay, so we can just move to the implementation of standardization using scikit-learn, yeah. So actually you can just use our previous code, yeah. So this one is the standardization. Okay, then this one you can just copy it, yeah, because we can just change the min-max scalar to standardize, yeah, standardize with standardize if not mistaken. Oh, standard scalar. So this one is standard scalar, and we don't need to use feature range, yeah, because this one has no feature range argument. Okay, then we just print it, and this one is the result after we standardize our X values, yeah. Okay. So after we standardize our X values, we can just calculate the mean and the standard deviation, yeah, from our XS values. So we will print the mean XS, yeah, equal np.min. We calculate the mean from the XS and print std XS equal np.std XS, yeah. So it will give the mean and the standard deviation values from our XS variable. Wait, I forgot to round it ya, round. We need to round it because the mean values will close to 0 ya, but actually it's not really 0 but close to 0, but we need to round it ya, so it will be 0 after we round it. Okay, so I think yeah, it's still easy ya for scaling our data because this one is the yeah because if we don't round the values, it will be close to 0. But actually, it's not a 0. It's not really 0, but close to 0. Because the data that we have is random, right? So if we don't round it, it will be close to 0. You can just try. If you remove the round, it will be close to 0. Yeah, close to 0. 0 point something something times, yeah, it will be close to 0. But the standard deviation will be 1 or close to 1. Yeah. In some cases, yeah, the mean values can be minus 0. Minus 0, it means the same values with zeros, right? Because minus zeros is the same with zeros, right? Because some of my students in my previous class also get the minus zeros values. Okay, close to 0, it can be minus something or plus something, yeah, minus something close to 0, or really small values close to 0, positive values close to 0. Okay, okay, any problem? Yeah. No? Okay, not yet. Yeah, we can just move to the next pre-processing method, yeah. So the next one is the normalizing observation, yeah. Like I was mentioning before, normalizing observation, we will scale our data by each rows, not the column, yeah. Okay, different from scaling and standardization that work on each feature. Actually, normalizing observation works on an individual sample for all features. So it means we will scale the data by each rows. So actually, this transformation is a common operation in text processing. Yeah. So maybe if you take the IIR course, yeah, you maybe you will also use the normalizing observation, yeah, because the data in text processing or natural language processing maybe, or maybe IIR, yeah, the data is a text, yeah, or yeah, text or word or something like that. Then every word will be represented as value, as a values, yeah. It can be integer values, or yeah, integer values start from 0 and something. Actually, this one, the normalizing observation, is a common operation in text processing. I will not discuss it more. Yeah, I will not give you some example in text processing because the explanation will be explained by your Pak Vincent, yeah, in text processing in IIR course, yeah. So actually, normalizing observation is a common operation in text processing. Okay, normalizing observation is used to transform an individual sample to a new form such that it has unit form, vector with length 1. Yeah, we can just assume that x equal x1, x2 to xn. Xn, it means we have n features for one samples. Yeah, x is a samples that contain n features. So x1 is the feature 1, x2 is the features 2, and xn is a features n. Is a non-zero individual sample consisted of n features. Yeah, to normalize the x to unit vector x accent, use the following equation. So x accent equal 1 divided by norm of x times x, yeah. So it will the new values, yeah, will be the new values equal 1 divided by the norm of x times x, yeah. The norm of x, this one we have some formula, yeah, to calculate the norm of x, yeah. So we have three formula to calculate the x the norm of X, yeah. So we call it as a norm of X, yeah, norm of X. We have three normalizing observation, which are Manhattan norm, Manhattan normalization, Euclidean normalization, and maximum normalization. Yeah. Yeah. This one, suppose X equal X1, X2 to Xn is an individual sample consisted of n features. So if we want to calculate the norm of X using L1 normalization or Manhattan normalization, yeah, Manhattan normalization means L1 normalization. Yeah. So the norm of X equal absolute values of X1 plus absolute values of X2 plus absolute values of Xn, yeah. So it will give us the norm of X if we use the L1 norm. And the second one is Euclidean normalization. This one is the most common normalization method, yeah. So you will see in some problem we'll use the L2 normalization. So the L2 normalization, the norm of X equal the root values from X1 square plus X2 square plus Xn square, yeah. So if we use the Euclidean normalization, we will use this equation. And the last one is L-inf normalization or maximum normalization, yeah. So the norm of X will be the maximum values from our attributes, yeah, from our attributes. So X1, X2, and the Xn, we need to calculate the absolute values for our for each feature that we have. Then we need to calculate the maximum values after that. Okay, so this one is the example of using the L2, L1 normalization, L-if normalization, yeah. So let's assume we have the X values. X values is one sample that contain three attributes, yeah, 15, 57, and 55. Be an individual sample, then we can just normalize the X using L2 normalization. For example, this one, we calculate the norm of X, yeah, using L2 normalization or Euclidean normalization equal the root of 15 square plus 57 square and 55 square equal 80.62. Yeah, 80.62. So this one is the norm of X if we use the L2 normalization. Then we calculate the individual samples. X accent equal 1 divided by 80.62 times this factor 15, 57, and 55. And the output will be 0.19, 0.71, and 0.68. Yeah. So this one is the new values after we normalize it. So if we calculate the norm of X accent, it will be 1. Yeah. So the norm of the new values, yeah, after we standardize it, yeah, so it will be 1. Yeah. So the norm values of X accent, if you use the L2 normalization, you can just calculate it. This one is the 0.19 square plus 0.71 square and 0.68 square. Then we root these values, it will give us 1. Yeah. It also work on L1 normalization and L-inf normalization. Okay. So the normalization, we work on each rows, yeah. So yeah, this one is different with the min-max scaling and standard scalar. But actually, we will work on each sample, yeah, in our data set. So how to implement in Python, yeah. So yeah, we can use the normalizer library from scikit-learn. Yeah, we can just call it. Then yeah, we can just call the fit and transform. Then we will get the normalized values. Okay, maybe you have any question in N1 and L1, L2, and if normalization? Yeah. Oh, just yeah. If you see the equation, yeah, it's simple. Yeah, I think so. Yeah, if you see in the example, yeah, if we use the L1 normalization, if I sum, yeah, if I do this as in data 1, yeah, in sample 1, 0.1.1 and something plus 0.44 something and plus 0.43 something, yeah, if we adding these values, it will give us a 1 values, yeah. Okay, we can just implement in Python. So this one is standardization. Okay, I think my internet connection is not connected. Wait. Okay, so I will give another text cell here. Then I will wait. This one is the normalization. Okay, the first one I will use the L1 normalization, L1 normalization. So I will call the scikit-learn dot pre-processing import normalizer. Then I create a transformer, the variable for that contain the normalizer function, yeah, normalizer. Then yeah, I create a new variable xn, x after we normalize it, yeah, xn equal, yeah, I use the same x, yeah, the same x with our previous x, yeah. So xn equal transformer dot fit transform x, yeah. Then after that I print the normalized values, and normalized observation. Then print xn. This one is the normalized observation. Okay, using L2, yeah, this one is the L2, the default values. If you call the normalizer, it will execute the L2 normalization. Yeah, if we don't give any argument in our normalizer function, it will execute the L2 normalization. Okay, so you can just calculate by yourself, yeah. This one, if we square these values plus these values plus these values, it will give us 1, yeah, 1, yeah. But actually this one we can just use the function from numpy.linalg, yeah. This one is a norm each normalize observation. Wait. Okay, then I just can call the np.lin alg.norm, yeah. This one is for calling the normalize for calculating the norm of x, yeah, for each sample that we have. Xn comma axis equal 1. So it will calculate the norm of x for each sample that we have here. It will give us 1, 1, 1, 1, and 1. So my question is why we should use the axis equal 1? Kenneth or Gabriel, why we put the axis equal 1 argument in our np.linalg norm function? This one, why we should give the axis equal 1 argument to norm function? Yeah, I think you have learned in data science programming, yeah, for calculating maybe on the sum of each rows or each column, yeah, using their axis. Axis can be 0 and 1, yeah, because in 2D we have rows and column. So my question is why we should use the axis equal 1 in the norm function? Kenneth or Gabriel? Axis equal 1, it means we calculate each rows or each column.
It's all
Column. Are you sure? Column or rows? Okay.
If we use
Uh,
1,
uh,
it will result on 5
five rows.
rows.
Uh,
And if we use 0,
hmm?
it will result on 3
3
down.
Okay. So what happen if we change the axis values to 0?
It will only 3, 0 point blah blah blah, comma 0 point blah blah blah. Oh, 1 point.
So we will calculate it to each column or each rows if we use the axis equal 0. So we calculate the norm for each columns or each rows if we use the axis equal 0.
I don't know.
Yeah,
We calculate every column.
yeah, every column if we use the axis equal 0, right?
Yeah.
Every column. So it will result on 3 values, right?
Yeah.
So if we change the axis values to 1, it will result 5 values, right? So we calculate it for each rows, not column, but each row. So wait, I will give annotation here. Maybe, yeah. So this one, if we calculate the norm of these values, yeah, it will give us 1, right? So this one will result 1. Okay. Then the next one, the next rows will also result 1, right? So axis equal 1, it will calculate the norm of values for each rows, not column, right? Okay, because this one, the norm function, if we just move back to our slide. So this one, the norm, yeah, and the norm function will calculate this formula, yeah, this formula, this one, this one. The norm function will calculate the norm, the norm function will calculate the normalized individual sample. Okay, sorry, and then the norm function will calculate this equation, yeah. If we use the L2 norm, yeah, it will calculate this function. So actually we can just move back to our Google Colab. Then this one is, if I change the values, if I give the norm argument here, then I will give the norm values to L1. What will happen? So this one, yeah, will calculate the normalized using L1 norm. The default values, remember the default values is the L2 norm, but we can just change the argument to norm equal L1. So it will calculate the L1 normalization. Yeah, the normalized observation also result is 1, yeah, because we change the order to 1. Yeah, the order, we need to give the order argument inside the norm, because the norm function will not know, yeah, which one of the normalized function that we use, because yeah, if we use the L1, so we need to change the order to 1. But if we change to L2, then we need to change this one to 2. But actually, if we remove this argument and also remove this argument, it will give us the L2 normalized function, because the default values is L2. Yeah, the default values is L2.
So what if we only mention one of them, for example,
Hmm?
the axis 1, comma order
Hmm?
1 without saying normalization?
Okay. Yeah, let's see what will happen if we change to L. It will give us not, it will result not one values, yeah, because this one is the L2 normalization, right? And this one is the L1 normalization. So it will calculate the values, these values using this formula, not this formula, right? Because this one is the order equal 1, then it will calculate the normalized function from L2, but will calculate is using the L1 normalization. So yeah, it will give us not one values for each observation. What about if we change to the max, yeah, the max normalization or L-inf normalization, yeah, we need to change it to np.enf, yeah, if I'm not mistaken, yeah, np.enf. So it will give us also one value. Yeah, it's more simple, because on each rows we can just calculate the maximum values, right? This one is the maximum values is 1. Okay. So I forgot about the situation when we we need to use L1, L2, and Lin. But actually, I forgot about it. But after I remember about it, I will give an explanation to you because I forgot which situation. Yeah, we need to use the L1, L2, and Lin. Yeah. Okay, I will Google it after this. Okay, so this one is the normalizing observation using L1, L2, and Lin normalization. Okay, so we can just move back to our slide. Then the next one is the generating polynomial features. Yeah. Okay, generating polynomial features. If the relation between the input features and the desired output is a nonlinear relationship, then generating polynomial features is one of solution for this problem. So there are some situation that the attribute that we have, yeah, is not enough for predicting the output. Yeah. So for example, we only have 3 attributes, yeah, but that 3 attributes, yeah, it's not enough for predicting the desired output, yeah, because the relationship between the input and the output is a nonlinear relationship. Actually, in machine learning, yeah, in machine learning, we cannot solve the nonlinear problem. Nonlinear problem, it means we cannot use the simple equation or simple regression equation. So yeah, it will be not enough for machine learning algorithm to predict the desired output. But if we use the deep learning algorithm, yeah, we don't need to generate polynomial features. But in machine learning, we need to generate the polynomial features because, like I was mentioning before, the machine learning algorithm cannot solve the nonlinear problem. So yeah, there are some situations that the feature that we have is not enough for predicting the desired output. So we need to generate other features. Yeah, the other features, the other features is the other features can be the interaction between the feature that we have, or maybe this one, the square from xi, or the cube of xi, or the power of 4 from xi. So yeah, suppose that we have x1, x2, and xn are an input features. Generating polynomial features is a process to transform each individual xi to the higher order form. So for example, we only have 3 features, x1, x2, and x3. Then we need to generate another features from our existing features, existing 3 features. So it can be from interaction from our previous features. So yeah, the example from generating polynomial features, yeah, let's assume that we have 2 sample with 2 attributes, yeah, 2, 5, and 3, 4. Be a sample with 2 features. Then we generate polynomial features degree of 2. It can be degree of 2, degree of 3, and degree of 4 from x, yeah. But in this example, we have degree of 2 and with degree of 3, yeah. So this one is the original features. With this one is the original feature, right? And that this one is the new features. The new features contain 3 features, yeah, right? This one is generated polynomial features degree of 2. So my question is, what is the pattern from these features? 4 and 9. Where do we get these values? What do you think? 4 and 9. Is the square from 2 and 3, right? 2 square will be a 4, 3 square, 3 square will be 9, right? So this one is generated from square from our first attribute, right? Okay, so I will give the notation here, x1 square, right? What about the next attributes? So this one, what do you think? 10 and 12. Where do we get these values? Kenneth or Gabriel? You can you see the pattern? It's like a TPA test, yeah. tes potensi akademik maybe. You can just find the pattern from the number, right? So
The second one will be
Huh?
2 multiplied by 5.
okay,
and 3 multiplied by 1.
okay. So x1 times x1 multiplied by x2. Okay, so we'll give notation here, x1 multiplied by x2, yeah, x1 times x2. What about the third features? X2 square, right? This one is the x2 square. Yeah, I also didn't know what is the pattern. Yeah, maybe this one is the pattern. Yeah. X1 square, x1 times x2, then x2 square. Yeah, x2 square. So the pattern from degree of 2 will be x1 square, x1 times x2, and x2 square. But what if we have three attributes? Yeah. Okay. I also didn't know the pattern if we have more than two features, yeah. But actually we can just Google it after this, yeah. If we have more than two features, then we generate the features using degree of 2. So what will the output from that existing features, yeah. Okay, so in this example we just use two features, yeah. What about the degree of 3, yeah? What do you think? This one is the original features, this one is the original features, yeah. And then this one, yeah, is the same with our previous degree of 2 generated polynomial features. And this one, what do you think about this? This one, 8 and 27. Where do we get these values? What do you think, Gabriel or Kenneth? The power of 3 from x1. Okay, the power of 3 from x1. What about 20 and 36? Where do we get these values?
From x1 square times x2.
Okay, x1 square times x2. Okay, right. What about 50 and 48? I think x2 times this one is of 10 times 5 and 12 times 4, yeah. So x2 times x1 times x2 sorry, where do we get this? 5 times 10, 4 times 12, yeah. 12 is x1 x2, x1 times x2, x1 times x2, yeah, x1 times x2 time x2, yeah. Wait, yeah, x1 times x2 times x2, yeah. Okay, so it will, yeah, it will be x1 times x2 square, yeah, x1 times x2 square. And the last one is the power of 3 from x2, yeah, the power of 3 from x2. Okay, wait. Okay, so we move on to the next slide. Is this one is the implementation of generating polynomial features, yeah. Okay, this one is the generating polynomial features. Okay. Okay. We can also use the scikit-learn libraries, yeah, for generating polynomial features. So we call the scikit-learn pre-processing import poly polynomial features, yeah. Then we create a new x variable equal np dot array. So we create 2 times 2 numpy array, yeah. So it's similar with the 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 matrix from our previous slide, yeah. So I will give the first row to 2 and 5, and the second row is 3 and 4. Okay, let me print the x values first. This one is the original features, yeah. 2, 5, 3, 4. It's similar with our example in the slide. Then I also print this one, original features. Okay, then we create a transformer variable equal polynomial features, ya, degree. So we give the degree argument here equal to, and include bias equal false, yeah. So actually include bias, if we change the value to true, it will give us one values, yeah, in our first attribute. So we will try to change the values to true, yeah, after this. So after that, we create the transformer that contain the polynomial features function. So the next one is we create a xp variable. Xp is the generated polynomial features from x, yeah. So xp equal transformer dot fit transform. Okay, then we put the x values here. Then after that, we print the generated features, yeah. Features degree of 2. Then print the xp. Okay, so this one is the generated features degree of 2. You can just copy this code to next cell. Then we can just change the degree values to 3. It will give us the generated features degree of 3 from our x matrix, yeah. So this one is the generated features degree of 3. Okay, what about if we change the include bias values to true, yeah? So it will give us one values, yeah, in the first attribute, yeah. So I think we will discuss it on the regression problem, yeah, in the linear regression next week, yeah. So this one will be useful if we uh do the regression, if we want to solve the regression problem using linear regression. So I will discuss it. We will discuss it next week, yeah, the bias values, yeah. Okay, so in this case, we just change the include bias to false, yeah. Okay, any question? Yeah, I think it's still easy, yeah, for, yeah, it's just transforming our data to a new form. Then, yeah, generated polynomial features will be useful if the existing features is not enough for predicting the desired output, yeah. So we need to generate the polynomial features. It can be useful, it can be not, yeah. It depends on the problem that we want to solve. So actually, if we have more features, so we have more dimension in our data set, right? So it will what is it called? It will make the computational cost higher, yeah. If we have more features, so the computational cost and the time complexity, yeah, and the computational time also will be higher, yeah. So yeah, it depends on the problem that you want to solve here. Okay. The next one is encoding categorical features, yeah. Yeah. Maybe any problem from you? Not our subject. Before we continue the encoding, okay, that's good. Okay, the next one is the encoding categorical features. Yeah, in some cases we have a feature that has not numerical values. Yeah, for example, you give the survey to the consumer maybe, then uh, there is one attribute that contain maybe good, bad, or enough. Yeah, good, bad, or enough. Maybe your IP, yeah, or maybe the NISP values from your from each course. Yeah, you can get A score, AB score, C score, B score, or D score, E score. Yeah, so that's are the categorical features. Yeah? So the features that we can predict, yeah, the variation from our features. It's like good, bad, or enough, or maybe A, B, C, D, E, A, B, yeah, B, C, and something like that. Then we need to encode that categorical features to a new form. Yeah, what kind of new form that we want to encode? Yeah, so this one, yeah. So the example we have the attribute that contain the categorical features. Yeah, so I think this one is the answer from maybe the surveyor, yeah, or maybe the respondent. I mean the respondent will give the answer for each question maybe, and the answer will be low, medium, and high. And the second answer, it can be agree, disagree, or neutral, or maybe strongly agree. Yeah. So this one is the categorical features. It's not continuous number. It's not numerical features. Yeah. It is the categorical features. Yeah. So we need to encode the categorical features to be a numerical features or continuous number. So yeah, we can just implement on Google Colab. Yeah. So I create another text cell here, and I give the title as encoding categorical features. Encoding categorical features. Then I generate a new variable here. So yeah, we will use pandas library for creating the dictionary variable. So I will import pandas as PD. Yeah. Then the X is a dictionary variable. Then I have a two column here, yeah, ans1 and ans2. So the first column is ans1. Then I give the values to low, then medium, then low again, high, and medium. And the next one is ans2. Ans2, I give the values to agree, then agree again, strongly disagree, then strongly disagree. Sorry, disagree first, then strongly disagree. Okay, strongly disagree, then neutral. Okay, this one is ans1 and ans2. Then we need to change the X dictionary variable to a data frame. Yeah. So remember, if we want to change the dictionary variable to data frame, we can just call pt.data frame. Yeah. pt.data frame, then give the X as argument. Then we can just print the data frame, and it will give us the table like this. Yeah. So we need to encode these categorical features, yeah, into a new form, yeah, to the continuous number. So we need to define the mapper. Mapper is a variable for mapping each categorical features to a new form, yeah, to a new form that is a continuous number. So mapper also a dictionary, yeah. So we give a map to low, yeah, low equal 1, then medium equal 2, then high equal 3, yeah, high equal 3. Then the next one is strongly disagree for the ends 2. Strongly disagree equal 1, then disagree equal 3, equal 3, disagree, then agree, agree equal neutral. This one is 2, maybe 2, then agree equal 3. Oh, sorry, neutral first. Neutral equal 3, then agree equal 4, strongly agree equal 5, yeah. Strongly agree equal 5. Okay, so this one is the mapper value, the mapper variable. Then if you want to encode this data frame, yeah, so we can just call the df.replace, and we put the mapper as an argument. Okay, this one is the mapper, yeah. Then the result after we, oh wait, disagree, oh this one I do a little typo here. This one is not disagree, but disagree, agree, strongly agree. Oh, this one, this disagree, yeah, I typo. Strongly strongly, oh that one, the L letter. Okay, strongly disagree. Yeah, that is the encoding and categorical features, yeah. Okay, I think still easy, yeah. So we can just move to the next method, yeah, for detecting the outliers, yeah. This one is very important, yeah, because some of the machine learning algorithm are sensitive to outliers, yeah. It will affect to the performance from our machine learning algorithm. So we need to detecting the outliers first, then we can just remove the outliers or doing something, yeah, to the outliers. So outliers can be caused from measurement error. It can be also from human error, or maybe data corruption or bugs from the software that capture the data. And the methods for outlier detection, we can use the standard deviation method or interquartile range method. Yeah. So we will learn two methods for detecting the outliers. Yeah, that's are the standard deviation method or interquartile range method. So the first one, the standard deviation method for detecting the outliers. Let's assume the distribution of features is Gaussian or close to Gaussian. So if we have the data that has the distribution, that has a Gaussian distribution for each features, or close to Gaussian distribution, we can use the standard deviation method. It means if we have the Gaussian distribution, so we have a graph like this. If we draw the histogram, the histogram from our features, so it will form like a Gaussian distribution. It will has the more frequencies, to the values that close to mean. So this one is the means values from our samples. So let's assume that our features has a Gaussian or close to Gaussian distribution. So it means if we draw the histogram, this one is the x-axis, is the features, is the kind of features. For example, this one 0 to 12, maybe this one is the age, the age from child sample maybe, and the 5 age, the age of 5 has the frequency of 250. So the mean values from our data is 250. The Gaussian distribution will form like this. So the 5, the mean values will be the 5. What do you think about this? Is the mean values also 5, or maybe close to 5? This one is the histogram of Gaussian distribution. 100% Gaussian distribution, because it's like a mountain. It's like a mountain. So the features or the frequencies from 5, from 5, maybe we can just say that this one is the age, the child which has 5 age, maybe age of 5, so the distribution or the frequency is 250. So we can just say that the means values from our sample is 250. Okay, so if we have features or maybe the values from our features that on this position, if we have a features that below the minimum values or maximum values from our sample, it's outside our Gaussian distribution, so we can just assume that the features contain outliers. Okay, so let's move on to the previous slide. So suppose X is a feature that comes from Gaussian distribution which has the mean values and variance. This one is the variance. Sigma square is the variance. Sigma is the standard deviation, where mu and sigma are the mean and the standard deviation of features responsible to X and satisfies the following properties. The probability of the features that in the range from mu to sigma, mu minus sigma to mu plus sigma is 68%. So we can just move to the next slide. So the probability that the values in this position, this one is just a illustration. So for example, this one, let's say that this range is on the mu minus sigma to mu plus sigma. So this one is mu minus sigma and this one is mu plus sigma. The probability that the values will be in this position is around 68%. Where do we get the 68% values? It's just it's just of what is it called, the abstract values. I don't know, this one is 60x maybe from previous research, yeah, they said that the probability that the values, yeah, is in the range from mu minus sigma to mu plus sigma is 68%. This one is from the formula, yeah, the absolute values, yeah, from previous research, yeah. Then the probability that the features, yeah, on this position, it means we can say that this one with, I will give another color, yeah. So this one, the first one is on this position, yeah, 60x% with this one. If the values inside this area, the probability will be 60x%, but in this area, yeah, the probability will be higher, yeah, because yeah, the range more wide, yeah, or wider, yeah. So if we see on the slide, the probability is 55 and 95%, yeah. And the last one, if the values, yeah, inside this area, I will give the green line here. So the probability that the values is in this position, is 99.7%, yeah. Okay, so if we have a values, yeah, outside this area, outside these areas, maybe in this area, or maybe in this area, yeah, above the upper bound of below the lower bound, so we can just assume that theta is an outlier. Okay, yeah, this one, if an observation can be considered as an outlier if it falls outside the mu minus 3 sigma and mu plus 3 sigma. Yeah, you don't need to think why we can get the 3 sigma or maybe 2 sigma. It's just, yeah, from previous research, yeah, they have they conclude that if the values outside this lower bound and this upper bound, yeah, it can be considered as an outlier. Okay, so the example is this, yeah. So let's X be a feature with 1000 observation. So we have 1000 samples from Gaussian distribution with mean values 5 and variance 4. So the mean value is 5 and variance 4, yeah. If we calculate the sigma, the standard deviation is a square from 4, yeah, 2.02. It's actually, it's not really 4 or 5, yeah. It can be 5 point somethings or 4 point somethings. Then if we calculate the variance and the standard deviation or sigma from this variance, it will be 2.02, yeah. Then we can define the lower bound and upper bound. The lower bound is minus 1.02 and the upper bound is 1.08, yeah. And the observation below the lower bound or above upper bound are considered as outliers, yeah. Okay, so yeah, if we use the standard deviation methods, we can just define the lower bound and upper bound by using this formula, yeah. If the values below the lower bound, it can be outlier, it can be considered as outlier, or if it is above the upper bound, it can be considered as outliers too. So my question is, if I have one values, yeah, is it an outlier or not? If I have one values, one from our sample, maybe there is one values, yeah, there is a values that is 1. So is it outlier or not? We have lower bound minus 1.02 and the upper bound is 1.08. If I have one values, is it outlier or not? Inside the lower bound and upper bound or not? I think you think yes. outliers or not? One.
One value.
One. The value is one. The one value is one. And our upper bound is 1.8, 1.08, and the lower bound is minus 1.08. If I have one, is it outliers or not? No, because it's below the upper bound and above the lower bound, right? One. The range from minus 1.02 and to 1.08 kan. So it will be considered as not outliers. It's not an outliers. Okay, so yeah, let's move on to the next slide. So this one is the implementation of standard deviation method using NumPy to detecting the outliers. Yeah. Okay, so okay, I will minimize this one, generating polynomial features. And the next one is detecting outliers. We have two methods. The first method is using standard deviation. Standard deviation. Okay, then to use the standard deviation for detecting the outliers, we randomize some values here using random.seed. So it means we use this function because we don't want that the random values always run random, but actually this one, our random values will be static. Yeah, so if we execute it again, so it will be the same values. Yeah, because if we don't use the random.seed, so the data will be completely random. If we execute it again and again, it will give us a different values. So I set the np random.seed with the three values here. Then the x values equal 5 times 2 at 5 plus 2 times np.random.run n with 1000 samples. So this one we have n letter here, run n. Run n means the distribution from our random variable is Gaussian or normal distribution because we use the run n. Yeah. If you compare with our previous code here, we don't give the run n here. So the distribution, it can be Gaussian or not. Yeah, we don't know. It will be completely random. It's not, it can be Gaussian distribution or not. Yeah, but if we give the run n here method, run n method, so it will give us the random values which has the Gaussian distribution. Okay, so for the detecting outlier, we need to calculate the mean values from our x data with x dot mean, and for the standard deviation, we calculate it as x dot std like this. Then yeah, we need to print. Oh no, we can just calculate the lower bound and the upper bound equal mean. Yeah, mean minus 3 times sd. This one is for the lower bound, and for the upper bound equal mean plus 3 times upper bound, right? So we define the lower bound and the upper bound here. Then we get the lower bound and the upper bound. Yeah. Then what is the next step? The next steps is we can just print the mean values maybe, or the standard deviation. Yeah, the mean percent point to f. So it will represent the mean values. Yeah. So here we have mean, then lower bound, upper bound, and standard deviation. Yeah. So the first percent point to f will represent the mean values, yeah. And for the standard deviation is the S standard deviation, this one, yeah. So the next one, standard deviation, then the next one is lower bound percent point to F. It will represent the lower bound values. And the last one is the upper bound. Okay. Okay. So yeah, let's print. Wait, upper bound is not defined. Upper bound. Oh, this one. It's not upper bound, but actually standard deviation, yeah. Okay, so this one is the mean values, and the standard deviation is 2.02, and the lower bound is minus 1.02. Yeah, it's similar with our previous example in the slide, yeah. So we need to get the outliers here. The outliers will be the X values that has the values below the lower bound or above the upper bound. So we can just use np.where with the condition. So the condition, if X below the lower bound or yeah, X above the upper bound. So if the X below the lower bound, or if the X if the X is above the upper bound, it will be considered as outliers. So the outliers will contain the values that is considered or that are considered as outliers. So we can just print with okay. I just print the detected outliers. Detected outliers, yeah. So detected outliers will be the outliers. What about not outliers, yeah, non-outliers? So we can just create another variable here, X underscore outliers free, yeah, outliers free equal X np.where the X, yeah, the X is inside the lower bound and upper bound. So because the outliers free will be higher than the outliers, so we don't need to print all of the outliers free number. So we can just print the number of non-outliers observations. Len X outliers free. So we can just print the number of the outliers free. Go. Okay. So this one is the outliers and not outliers. Yeah. So we get two outliers, yeah, in our data. 11 point something and 12 point something, yeah. And the non outliers are 998. Any question? Still okay. So yeah, the standard deviation is one method for detecting the outliers. So I think we need a break, yeah, around 10 minutes. So if you want to go to the restroom or maybe you want to drink something, you can go to the canteen. Yeah. Okay, 10 minutes, yeah. So we will start it at 14 46, yeah.
Where's the nearest?
The nearest
Restroom.
threshold
Rest or the toilet?
or the restroom.
Yeah.
I think on the second floor. So you go to this you I don't know, maybe in this area. I don't know. In this floor any restroom or not, I don't know. But actually in second floor you will find the restroom. Yeah. I also didn't familiar with this building also because yeah, last semester I don't teach this room, so I don't know. The recording still wait. Hmm. Okay, the next one is the detecting outliers by using the interquartile range. Yeah, it's similar with the standard deviation. The difference is it's only on the lower bound and the upper bound. The interquartile range or IQR method can be applied to feature from any distribution. Yeah, if we compare with the standard deviation can be applied only if we have a data set that has the Gaussian distribution. But actually, if the data set is not in Gaussian distribution, so maybe if we draw the histogram, it's not like this. Yeah, maybe yeah, the distribution is not the mean values is not on the center of the histogram, so we need to use the interquartile range. Yeah, so the IQR is the difference between the third quartile and the first quartile. Yeah, so I think the quartile is there is no formula. Yeah, there is no equation about the Q3 and Q1, so I will open from the block. Yeah, so I think this one is a good example to represent the quartile 1 and quartile 3. So we need to sort our data first. Yeah. So for example, this one we have 45, 47 until 80. Then this one is the sorted data that we have. Then we need to find the Q1 and Q3 from the data. So first of all, we need to calculate the median first. Yeah. So the median is the 45, 40 of 54. Yeah. Then we divide our data into two parts. Yeah, lower half and upper half. Then we need to find the median values from the lower half and the upper half. So we have a Q1 and Q3. And this one is Q2. Yeah, Q2 is the median values from our sorted data. So after we have the Q1 and Q3, we can calculate the interquartile range or IQR. IQR equals Q3 minus Q1. Yeah. So in this example, the interquartile range is 58 minus 52 equals 6. Yeah. So after we have the IQR, so we can set the lower bound and the upper bound from our data. So the lower bound will be Q1 minus 1.5 times IQR, and the upper bound will be the Q3 plus 1.5 times IQR. And if the data outside this lower bound and upper bound, then we can be considered that the data as an outlier. Yeah. Okay, so in this example, we have a data x, yeah, equal 8.58 and something and so on and so on. Then we can calculate. Yeah, let's assume that we can get the Q1 values equal 4.11 and the Q3 values equal 5.12. Yeah, so the IQR will be 1.01. Then we can set the lower bound and the upper bound, and the outliers will be 1.27 and 8.58. Yeah. Yeah.
What if somehow in the data we found that there is a median
Hmm.
value.
Hmm.
So we for the upper bound.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
Example, the 54 is inside the data. So the 54 is included or not?
Wait. So in this example, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9 and 10. Yeah, yeah. So yeah, I think it it is included. So the lower half will start from the first data into the median. It is the lower half, and the upper half will be that median into the last number from our data. So median is included into the lower bound and a lower half and the upper half. Okay. So in this example, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. We have even values, even. Yeah. But if we have odd values, so the median will be included. Yeah. The median will be included. Okay. Okay. So yeah. Let's move on to the implementation of interquartile. So we can just copy from our previous code here, then we paste it, then we can just change the mean and the standard deviation. We will not use it again, so I just remove it. Then I need to give the Q1 and Q3. Q1 and Q3 equal NP dot percentile. So this one is for getting the quartile 1 and quartile 3. 25 percentile, then we put the X argument, yeah, because we want to get the Q1 and Q3 from the X values. And the second argument will be the 25 and 75. So it means the 25 will represent the quartile 1 and 75 will represent the quartile 3. Quartile 3. So in this example, we can just change the mean to Q1 minus 1.5 times IQR. IQR, we need to define the IQR first. Yeah, IQR equal Q3 minus Q1. Okay. Then this one is Q3 plus 1.5 times IQR. Okay. Then we change this value to Q1. This one is Q3, and we put another values here, IQR. Okay. Then this one we change it to Q1, Q3, and IQR. Okay. We can just compare the standard deviation method and interquartile method for detecting the outliers. Yeah, we use the same data. So let's execute this one with 25 Q3 and Q1. Oh, this one is not ST, but IQR. Sorry. Okay. So we can detect more outliers, yeah, if we use the interquartile range method. Yeah, so the outliers, yeah, so these values 11 point somethings and 12 point somethings also be considered as outliers if we use the interquartile range. But actually we have other outliers. Yeah, if you use the IQR method, we have minus 0.83 something and minus 0.96 something and minus 0.95 something. But it is considered as outliers if you use the IQR range, but it's not considered as outliers in the standard deviation. I don't know. This one is more accurate or not. Yeah, it depends on the data that we have. But actually, there are two methods for detecting the outliers, yeah, using IQR or standard deviation. If we use the interquartile, we assume that our data is not in Gaussian distribution, so we can use the IQR. Yeah. So if the data set is in Gaussian distribution, so we can use the IQR, yeah, IQR or standard deviation. But if our data is not in Gaussian distribution, so it's better if you use the interquartile range method. Okay. So this one is for detecting the outliers using IQR. IQR. So I forgot to put IQR range. So I will share the code after this. So if I think you can also see on the slide. So the code will be on the slide also. So after this I also share this code maybe if you need it. So you can just download it. So the last one is the we move on to the next slide. So the last one is handling missing values. So this one is for detecting the features that has no values. So sometimes the dataset used to build a machine learning model contains missing values in input feature or desired output. Most machine learning algorithms cannot handle missing values, and handling missing values need to be performed during the pre-processing step. We have three types of missing values. We can just call it as MCAR, missing completely at random, or missing at random, or MAR, and missing not at random, or MNAR. So what is the differences between this type of missing values? As you can see on the slide, that the probability of the MCAR, the probability that a value is missing is independent of everything. So we don't know. We don't know what caused that the missing values occur. It can be human error or something like that. But in missing at random, or MAR, the probability that a value is missing is not completely random, but depends on the information captured in other features. Maybe what is it called? The values is swiped with the previous data or the next data. What is it called? In Indonesia, I can call it as tertukar. Swipe. So missing at random is not really it's not completely random, but depends on the information captured in other features. And for the missing not at random, or MNAR, the probability that the value is missing is not random and depends on information not captured in our features. So it's not random and depends on information not captured in our features. But actually these three types of missing values is just the differences, the types, the type differences. But actually in handling missing values, we can use the same methodology for solving these three types of missing values. So the first one we can use interpolation, and the second one you can use machine learning model. But actually we will not discuss this methodology because if you use the machine learning model, it will be complicated. But actually if we still have a time, next week we also be learning. We will also learn about how to use the machine learning model for handling missing values. And the last one, using mean or median or mode. So the example of the missing values, as you can see here, we have not a number values on the second sample, on the second sample, and on the third columns or third attributes. So not a number. This one is the missing values. We don't have any number inside this columns or rows. So this one is the implementation for handling the missing values. I will not implement this because this one is very simple, using the pandas library. So we create the random variable which has a shape of 5 rows and 3 columns. Then we put the not a number values on the X data in rows 1 and column 2. Then we change the X variable into a data frame. Then we have a df that represent the X values using a data frame. Then we print the data frame. It will be like this. For handling the missing values, the first one is very simple and very simple methodology for handling the missing values. We can just remove the rows that contain a missing values. So the rows one will be deleted using the data frame df.dropna function with in place equal true argument. So after we execute this code, So the rows that contain the not a number values or missing values will be deleted. And the second one, we can use the interpolation. Interpolation will change the not a number values into the average, the average between the previous rows and the second rows. For example, this one 0 and 40, then we can just calculate the average between the rows number 0 and the rows number 2, and we can get 20 numbers here. So we can just use the df.interpolate, and we put the in place argument to true, then it will be like this, yeah. And the last one, we can use the mean, median, or mode, yeah, for putting the new number into not a number values. So we can just calculate the mean values for all samples in our data set, yeah, on attributes number 2. So this one, and we can get the mean values from our data is 28, or we can also use the median values, yeah. So we sort the data first, yeah. We sort the attribute to the attribute 2 values first, then we can just get the median values, then we put the median values into our not a number values, yeah. So I think this one I will not implement this, yeah, into Python, because this one is very simple, so you can implement it by yourself, yeah. So I think that's all for our course today. Maybe you have any question. Next week we will discuss about the regression problem. We will try to learn about the linear regression and also polynomial regression, yeah, for solving the regression problem. So I think that's all for our class today. So if you have any question, you can